With over 1,000 weapons in Destiny, it can be hard to know what's best, especially if you're one of the many people who haven't played in the past couple of years. Whether it's the 100+ exotics to choose from, or the fact that we have over 60 rocket launchers now, there are specific ones worth your time to grind for, and then other ones that aren't. Whether it's an old exotic like the Sunshot, which is an absolute must-have, or the brand new one from Final Shape called Still Hunt, I have gone through every single option in the game and boiled down a list of 26 weapons that are worth your time to get. I had two main criteria, which was being relied on for any difficulty level you want, and then more importantly, being obtainable. With a lot of weapons being impossible to acquire, it was imperative to me that I provide a list of options that you can still get today with some free-to-play alternatives wherever possible. So here is the list of weapons you should chase. Number 1 is a sword with a special perk called Eager Edge. It makes it so that every time you pull out your sword, your next swipe covers a huge distance really quickly. If you've ever seen someone flying at the speed of sound, it's probably because of this perk, and it makes every activity in Destiny more fun, hence why it's first on the list. Now, only a few swords get access to this perk, so I'll give you the best ones. Half-Truths, the other half, and Falling Guillotine. You can grab the first two from Dares of Eternity, and they're actually craftable, meaning you can pick the exact perks you want. The third one, Falling Guillotine, is from an activity called Onslaught with random rolls only. Fortunately, all three of these activities are free to play, and it's definitely worth the grind. Now, for particular roles you might be looking for, since Eager Edge only takes up one perk column, I've put my other favorite perks up on screen for all three scenarios. This next one, it's rocket sidearms, one for each slot, and especially the craftable one that came with Final Shape. The first of its kind that we saw is the Indebted Kindness in your energy slot, and I needed to at least give this one a shout out because of how awesome it is, but since it's behind a paid Warlord's Ruin dungeon key from the Lightfall DLC, I'm going to focus on two other ones instead. Top slot strand sidearm named The Call, and then an energy slot solar one called Aberrant Action. Rocket sidearms can kind of do everything. They have amazing ammo economy, they hit hard enough that you can use them pretty well however you want, they have solid target acquisition so you don't feel like you're ever missing, they work up close, far away, they're just versatile. The Indebted Kindness can clear entire waves if you have the Volt Shot perk. The Call is craftable, meaning you can pick exactly what you want, and both of those actually get the Lead from Gold perk, by the way, so you can literally just never run a primary again if that's what you want. That third one I mentioned, Aberrant Action, it releases in Act 2, but I needed to mention it now because we're going to get access to a special perk combo. In the third column, it's going to come with Heal Clip, which is huge for survivability and tougher activities, but then in the fourth column, we're going to get some splash damage perks. Incandescent or Reverberation with Heal Clip at the same time on a rocket sidearm is going to slap. It's worth noting that if you have one already and it has beacon rounds, that's a pretty good perk too. It adds some heat seeking to them, which is great for hip firing and just faster gunplay. Heck, it'll even curve around corners at max stacks. And honestly, it's hard to oversell rocket sidearms right now. Like, you just need one in your kit. Moving on, we've got a wave frame grenade launcher called Forbearance. It's incredible for handling large groups of enemies at a time, and there's actually two ways of getting it right now. You can grab the original one from the Vow of the Disciple raid, which you can eventually craft, or you can get a free-to-play version as part of the Onslaught activity. Both versions get access to the famous Ambitious Assassin chain reaction roll. With that combo, every time you kill an enemy, they'll explode, and because each shot sends a huge wave of damage out there, anything caught within it will explode onto other enemies nearby, and then reloading after getting all of those kills will overflow your magazine, meaning you almost always have two shots instead of one. There's a reason people out there have like 100,000 kills on this thing. My next picks are two pretty insane exotics, the Sunshot Hand Cannon and Trinity Ghoul Bow. As some of the best ad clear options in the game, they fill that role slightly differently. On one hand, you have Sunshot, which is a solar hand cannon where each shot feels like a miniature nuke. Killing enemies triggers a chain of explosions, like I'm talking one little thrall can detonate an entire room. Then another cool thing is that exotic primaries have better odds of creating heavy ammo bricks for you on their kills, so it becomes an amazing support weapon. Because it's solar, it synergizes very well with a lot of the solar subclass effects too, like making sunspots on a Titan or extending the restoration timer, which is a core healing mechanic on any character. It's really fun in any level of content, but can carry you in a lot of high level content too. It's a free to play exotic that can randomly drop from exotic engrams or has a chance to be sold by Xur each weekend, so keep a lookout. On the other end, we have Trinity Ghoul, and you'll need a little more legwork here, but I promise you the payoff is worth it. You need to own the Forsaken pack for it to drop from exotic engrams, but then once you have it, any activity completions or even random kills have a chance to drop its catalyst. That alone brings this bow from like a C tier all the way up to S tier, and with it on, any arc kills you get activate Chain Lightning, which basically one-shots all red bars in a wide area. It becomes very useful in things like raids and dungeons, and the coolest thing is that it's not just your arc bow kills causing the chain reaction, it's any arc kill, meaning the chain lightning stemming from the original kill will reactivate itself and you can just keep hip firing instant kills everywhere without even looking. Once you start using this thing, it's pretty hard to go back. All right, let's talk about the healing auto rifle, No Hesitation. A new weapon that came from Final Shape, this thing fills up a little meter by your reticle when you deal damage. That meter shows you how many healing shots that you can fire at your teammates, and it's pretty substantial. It was a very popular pick, for example, in the day 1 raid just to keep everyone alive. You can craft this thing too, so the main perk you're looking for is called Psychic in the 3rd column. The reason is so that when you're healing your teammates, the perk will now give you both restoration for some beautiful synergy. That buff is still so strong, and the devs literally called this thing the Don't Die gun when they announced it. In the 4th column, you guys can play with some other tools like Incandescent or Circle of Life, and then there's also some synergies to be had with other things like an exotic helmet called the Speaker's Sight, or fragments like the Ember of Benevolence. Basically anything to make you the ultimate medic for your team. Very cool addition to the game. As we move on, we're going to talk about the Heritage, a goated slug shotgun in both PvE and PvP. With monster stats and S tier perks for both game modes, it's just built different. Slug shotguns in general are very useful for boss damage and taking down beefier enemies fast, which really comes in handy in places like raids. You're going to want the Reconstruction Recombination roll for PvE, which makes it so that your mag is constantly refilling itself while stowed away using other weapons, and then the kills that you're getting with those other weapons will actually buff your next Heritage shot when you swap back to it. For Crucible, this would be my role, and I should mention that it comes from the Deep Stone Crypt raid, which is craftable, meaning you can just make 2 versions. Also, every week there's a featured farmable raid, meaning every once in a while, you'll be able to go for this thing non-stop in a specific week, so I highly recommend joining my Discord and getting some help keeping an eye out for that. Now, because the Heritage requires the Beyond Light DLC, a great free-to-play option is the Fortissimo 11. You can get this one from just playing strikes in the Vanguard Ops playlist, either as a random drop or by focusing for it at Zavala using the Vanguard engrams. The perk pool is pretty huge, so you get a lot of options. Highlighting a few that stand out to me would be Threat Detector in the 3rd column, because that juices your handling and reload for quick weapon swaps in those damage phases for PvE. You've got Demolitionist, which reloads it when you throw your grenade, and it'll give you more grenades in general. Then I'd say the next best options are Lead from Gold, because that one helps your ammo economy while you're just playing the game, and then 4th time's the Charm, which can also help you by refilling part of your mag after hitting 4 crits in a row. Any one of those in the 3rd column and I'd say you're good to go. Then for the 4th column, I really like Frenzy because it helps you with your handling and reload again, but Surrounded is also amazing because it gives you a big damage buff when you have enemies nearby. Diving into a PvP specific weapon, we have the No Time to Explain. This thing has stood the test of time for nearly 4 years now, and no matter what Bungie does, it still carries. It's a 340 RPM archetype, which can 2-burst people if your aim is on point, and deletes them very fast. The reason it stands out amongst this archetype though is Time Chasm. After getting 10 headshots, in no particular order by the way, just basically by playing, you get something that looks like an arc buddy which shoots extra bullets for you at the same time, making it the hardest weapon to beat. It converts it from like a potential 2-burst to almost guaranteed 2-burst. This one also requires the Beyond Light DLC, getting it right after the campaign, so I included a hefty legendary competitor called the Blast Furnace. That one you can get from the Onslaught activity, and it's a 4-burst pulse rifle that really shines in PvP thanks to having some incredible stability, giving you a good feeling of consistency. Jumping back to PvE, we've got more of a category option with blinding grenade launchers, specifically using the perk Disorienting Grenades. I'll list a few examples in a moment, but the reason why this is so critical is because of crowd control at higher levels of difficulty. When I say crowd control, I mean that sometimes just keeping big enemies at bay while you deal with something else is huge, and since the explosion on a grenade launcher has a pretty wide radius, it's very effective. An example of this would be like an annoying tormentor or even ranged things like shriekers. The beauty is that you can keep reapplying it too, so you just shoot it in their direction and then get back to what you need it to do. Better yet is combining that with the auto-loading holster perk, meaning you can blind them, swap to a different weapon to kill or damage them with ease, and then swap back and reapply. My favorite option is the Lingering Dread from the Duality dungeon because it gives you the trifecta of disorienting grenades, auto-loading holster, and chill clip, which comes in handy stunning champions. The alternative in this section, however, is actually argued to be just as good or maybe even better, and it's free to play. Pardon Our Dust comes from the Dares of Eternity activity, and you can craft it, meaning you can get enhanced auto-loading. That'll refill your mag even sooner, and then pairing it with Demolitionist is really fun because everybody loves getting more grenades. With these being the two best in slot for auto-loading grenade launchers that can blind out there, if you find one, give it a shot. Okay, now let's talk about the Commemoration. Machine guns are really strong right now in all levels of content, and Commemoration from the Deep Stone Crypt raid is a monster. As a raid weapon, its stats are naturally higher, but it comes with perks that basically remove any negatives that would normally come from using a machine gun anyway. It's got pretty great handling, you'll never need to reload it thanks to the reconstruction perk, and then because that doubles the mag size, you don't even need to use extended mag in your second column or worry about using reloader mods on your build. That in itself makes it better for so many builds out there, and you can run things like steady rounds to keep it laser accurate or any of the range perks in that column. On top of that, you get perks like Rampage or Killing Tally in the fourth column that let you steamroll entire rooms in one go. Pairing this with a Void Volatile build is some of the most fun you can have. Now, I did think of an alternative here, which comes from another raid, Crota's End, but that one's free to play, and the weapon is called Song of Ir-Yût. Honestly, all of the same concepts that I described apply here, and this thing is also very worth getting if you don't own the DLC for Commemoration. Our next weapon is becoming a bit of a cult classic, and that's the Witherhoard. If you own the Shadowkeep expansion, then you can buy it from the Monument to Lost Lights in the tower. The reason Witherhoard is so good is that when it's fired, it leaves behind a huge blight puddle that repeatedly damages anything inside. You can put it down at doorways or spawn points with it, and enemies will just die before they even get a chance to get to you. Not only that, but you can stick enemies with it too to deal more damage, and if they die during that, then they will leave the same puddle behind. It's really good at comboing with other weapons, like a lot of people enjoy using this with bait and switch on their heavy. That requires you to deal damage with all three of your weapons to get a heavy damage boost, and Witherhoard is pretty sweet for that because when you shoot it once, it'll keep damaging while you're cycling back to your heavy. People even grew to enjoy this in PvP to deal with Bubble Titans too. I highly recommend you grab the Catalyst for it because completing that will give you auto-loading holster to make this thing a whole other level, and to do that, go to Banshee at the tower. I want to talk about a shotgun now called the Outlandre M5. Similar to before, this one's more of a category using an incredible perk called 1-2 Punch. Right now, the Outlandre is the easiest option to get from Dares of Eternity or Xur's Treasure, plus it's craftable with enhanced perks. Now, 1-2 Punch does something very special. Landing all of your shotgun pellets on a target makes your next melee deal huge damage. The beauty here is that it stacks with other melee buffs, so people like to run this on Titan, whether it's with the Syntheseps exotic or Banner of War, maybe on Hunter using Combination Blow and Liar's Handshake. You can end up in a run and gun style, shotgun meleeing everything, dealing massive damage, and it makes it really fun. One key thing is that you have to land your melee within about 1 second of your shotgun shot, so I really enjoy high handling and a good sized magazine. Because of this, I like to run Outlandre thanks to a good sized magazine, the slide shot perk to reload whenever I slide, and then the origin trait which boosts my handling if I take any damage at all. Some good alternatives though are the Ikalos or Swordbreaker from the Crota's End raid, which again is free to play. Sticking with shotguns for a moment, I present to you the Fourth Horseman. There's no need for a particular mechanic like slide shotgunning with 1-2 punch or anything. This is just an exotic that many people underrate or forget about, even though it absolutely slaps. You literally just get to point blank range, hold down the trigger, and watch something die. It fires at insane speed, and each shot increases the damage one after the other. Basically, landing every shot makes the final ones hit really hard, which you're always going to do because you're up close. The Catalyst gives you an extra shot in the mag, which just gives you one more higher damage at the end. And pairing this thing with something like the Hunter's Dodge Reload, maybe the Warlock's Rain of Fire exotic boots, or even the Titan's Rally Barricade, you can end up dealing some huge amounts of damage in a really short time span. Highly recommend you grab it from the Shadowkeep section of the Monument to Lost Lights in the tower. Time for another PvP option. We've got the Rose, and I honestly probably could have called this a section of 140 hand cannons, but Rose is truly unique because it's the only 140 RPM that has an intrinsic lightweight bonus. That archetype benefit is normally reserved for non-hand cannons, but Rose is special and it makes you run faster while using it, plus benefit from higher handling, which is pretty clutch in the Crucible. Something we're fortunate of is that Bungie gave the perk pool incredible options, which basically means if you get any roll to drop, you're going to be able to do some good work with it. My personal favorite would be using Slide Shot Eye of the Storm. This allows me to easily reload while I'm sliding across the map, and then increased accuracy during my gunfights thanks to Eye of the Storm. I will say an honorable mention would be the Ace of Spades exotic. I think a lot of people forget about that one too, just how strong it is in gameplay, but Rose is free to play, so just go get the thing, trust me. Now, since that is a top slot weapon for PvP, I figured I might as well mention something really good to pair with it, which is the Matador 64. It's an energy shotgun with the precision frame archetype. What this means is it's got really high range, decent handling, and the best pellet spread because those are no longer random. Out of all the shotgun options, this is the one that matches the Guardian shape the best and the most reliable. My god roll pick is the Threat Detector opening shot, which helps you swap to it insanely quickly when an enemy is pushing you, and then because you've just swapped to it, you'll get a bonus 20 range on your initial shot. It drops from the Grasp of Avarice dungeon as part of the 30th anniversary pack, which usually has a bunch of people farming it when it's in its rotation, so be sure to ask people in my Discord. I did want to mention some alternatives here, and the first would be the Exotic Shotgun Duality. Long story short, this one's pretty cool because it gives you a spread fire from the hip, but then a slug shotgun when you aim down sights. I really wanted to mention it because of how good it is, but I know it requires the Beyond Light pack, so some easier free-to-play alternatives would be Fellwinter's Lie from the Monument to Lost Lights, or running the free Vault of Glass raid to try and get a Found Verdict. As we move on, we're going to talk about a fusion rifle called the Riptide. Fusions are great in PvE. They fill a role of a mid-range situation where you can take chunks out of a single enemy or spread your shots across multiple weak ones. They also usually come with a good suite of perks, and Riptide is no exception here. The main thing people go for is auto-loading and chill clip. This allows the top half of your magazine to slow enemies when you shoot it, which will also stun overloads, by the way. But then if you fire multiple times with chill clip, it'll freeze an enemy, which can stun unstoppable champions. It can even prevent barrier champs from putting up their shield, which I think a lot of people still forget. The auto-loading I explained on other weapons before, it's just great when you swap to a weapon and it's reloaded for you, and this is just a very versatile weapon that you can get from the Crucible. It'll either drop randomly from your gameplay, or you can go and focus those Crucible engrams with shacks at the tower. Now we're going to talk about a rocket launcher that completely changed the game when it was brought to D2. That is the Gallarhorn. To grab this, you'll need to own the 30th anniversary pack and start a questline at Shaw Han that will lead you to the Grasp of Avarice dungeon. Once you've got this thing, you will become your teammate's best friend. On its own, every rocket you fire will splinter out into a bunch of tracking missiles that destroy everything else in the area. If you're focusing on one big target, that's fine, they'll just turn around and hit that same target. Because of this, it's a great mix for most game activities, but then the real sauce comes from a buff called Pack Hunter. After shooting your rocket, every teammate around you using legendary rockets will get missiles added to theirs. Essentially, during a boss DPS, your one rocket can buff all the other 5, bringing your entire team's overall damage up. Honestly, nowadays, every team has a dedicated Gallarhorn user because it's a really essential role. Since I was mentioning legendary rocket launchers, I've got to cover the one called Apex Predator. There's a lot of options out there. I think I said there was over 60, but this is your best bet for individual damage. You can grab it from the Last Wish raid, and because it's craftable, you can get some enhanced perks. The most popular role is Reconstruction Bait and Switch. That lets you have 2 rockets in the magazine instead of 1, an auto reload feature, and a 30% damage buff by activating Bait and Switch, which I mentioned earlier is by hitting the target with all 3 of your weapons. This is such a popular weapon that top players will even craft a second one using the Surrounded perk in the 4th column for a more passive damage buff during their general gameplay. Now, because I mentioned the Last Wish raid, you will need to own the Forsaken pack, so I thought of a good free-to-play alternative, which is called Hothead from Vanguard Legacy Focusing. You can do that over at Zavala, and what you want to find is Field Prep Clown Cartridge. That combination lets you sink a ton of rockets in a tight time frame, but a backup would be Explosive Light for a small damage buff instead of having 2 in the mag. Moving on, we have the Succession Sniper Rifle, one of the most well-rounded snipers in the game. It's an aggressive frame archetype, meaning high damage with a lower rate of fire, allowing you to one-shot most things you would need to. This profile really shines with the reconstruction perk because you never have to worry about reloading and get double the magazine size of most other snipers in the category. For the second perk, I'll actually give a couple of options because there are now 2 different sources that you can get this sniper. The original is from the Deepstone Raid Crypt, which you can still grind out if you want to craft it, but a free-to-play version drops from Onslaught. If you go for that route, it's going to be random rolls, and the options that I like for the second perk are either Vorpal or Recombination for a damage bump. At the end of the day, if I could only pick one legendary sniper to live with in the game, Succession would be it. How about an exotic sniper? I originally wanted to put the Izanagi's Burden in here, and although I still think that sniper is worth your time to get, I couldn't just not talk about the Still Hunt. Like, even if everyone got it from the campaign, for those that came here through Final Shape, this thing is just something else. Scoring precision hits or collecting orbs will charge a meter on the bottom left, and when it's charged, you just hold reload and bam, you've got a golden gun. Technically a golden gun sniper, but what's wild is that it's treated as a super, so that means things that buff supers buff this. The Hunter Exotic Star Eater Scales or Nighthawk, all of these things buff this sniper's golden gun shot. If you're not a hunter, you can still pop a golden gun now. It's very cool. What's probably the most popular part about this, other than doing good damage, is the fact that you get to complete this meter at a rally flag. The times where you need it most, you don't have to go through all the hassle of setting it up. Very unique exotic, just ready to go out of the box strong for any kind of boss damage or really anything with a crit like Tormentors, just an awesome weapon altogether. I want to go back to PvP for a moment and mention the Summoner. Auto rifles are in a good spot now, and I encourage people to give them a shot. This one's behind Trials of Osiris, which I know is a tough cookie to crack for many people out there, but again, feel free to join my Discord and ping me. We might be able to get some help for you because the combination of Summoner's stats and perks are top tier. In particular is the Zen Moment perk, and if you're coming back from a long break, they've fixed this thing. Like, it can make your gun feel like a laser beam now. It doesn't matter what input you use either. I have a lot of fun pairing that with the Onslaught perk in the 4th column, which makes it shoot super fast after a kill, no need for a reload. Another option I should mention is that people really do love the heal clip kill clip combo because reloading gives you a health and damage buff at once. This next one is called Sleeper Simulant, and man, do I love this weapon. It's like the perfect quote-unquote, I just want to do damage. There's no stressing about optimizing damage to keep up with teammates. You literally just put this exotic on, start shooting, and stop worrying. You'll be shocked how often you end up on top when it comes to DPS just because this is so reliable against bosses. I will say the Catalyst is pretty important because it lets you shoot faster, but other than that, it's free to play. You can buy it from the kiosk. Trust me when I say if you've ever struggled with damage, just put this thing on. Plus, it's like a freaking laser shooting railgun. How can you not love it? Sticking with the linear fusion, but special ammo instead of heavy, we've got the Arbalist. This can drop from exotic engrams if you're free to play, but if you do own the current DLC, over at Shawhan in the Cosmodrome, you'll have a direct quest to unlock it. The most commonly mentioned thing for Arbalist is that it's a permanent option against anti-barrier champs. This is totally true and great, but the neatest thing about it in my opinion is that it will one-shot any shield in the game, whether it's breaking a basic elemental shield or arguably the cooler thing, mechanical shields. A perfect example of that is in the Ghosts of the Deep dungeon. A boss can have a shield that requires like over 500,000 damage be dealt to it before you can actually start chipping away at their health. But instead of your team burning a ton of ammo to do that, one person can just hit it with Arbalist and break it in a single shot. This is truly a must-have exotic on everybody's account in my opinion. My next pick is another exotic, and this one is everyone's favorite chainsaw sword called the Lament. You can rev it up by using your block button, and then after taking some hits, you can chain a number of light attacks all in a row, finishing with a heavy attack. It's that specific sequence of block, light, heavy, and the number of light attacks that you did will buff how much that final heavy attack does. It's a really fun and unique combo because you can safely deal a ton of up-close damage. Taking it one step further is giving it the amazing synergy using the Titan exotic called Stronghold. I have a whole build video covering this specifically, but in short, getting hits with the Lament first will give you chunks of health back, and then on top of that, the Stronghold exotic gives you an extra healing mechanic called Restoration based on how much damage you blocked. It's a perfect synergy that also gets anti-barrier to allow you to basically chew through anything you want. The Lament can be picked up as a quest from Banshee after completing the Beyond Light campaign. This next one dominates in both PvP and PvE, named Conditional Finality. I would actually go as far as saying it's the undisputed king shotgun in PvP, but let's explain how it works. For starters, it comes with 95 handling, which makes it so smooth to play, but then the actual pellet spread is unique too because there's two of them, a triangle and a square, both of which are great for consistency. Then if you land nearly every pellet, it'll freeze the target or set them on fire depending on whether or not you have a stasis or solar shot. It's such a cool design swapping between those two types, and it drops from the final boss of the Root of Nightmares raid. Like the other raids, this is farmable for 1 week at a time every couple of months. Back to that freezing comment, it can be really handy to deal with Bubble Titans or Well of Radiance Warlocks. And then possibly the best part of this in PvE is the fact it can brute force champions pretty darn well. When I take it into that side of the game, I like to pair it with the Solar Holster mod because I can keep igniting an enemy over and over by shooting them and stowing it for a second. Moving on, I want to talk about the scenario where you get the conditional finality and take it into PvP. A great option to pair with it in the energy slot is the Igneous Hammer. Another undisputed king of its class, this is a 120 RPM hand cannon, and there's almost too much to say about it, whether it's the stats dominating its counterparts or the fact it comes with a perk called Precision Instrument. That perk increases your headshot damage from just hitting people. So literally during a 3-tap scenario, for example, each headshot will deal more damage, allowing you to 2-crit 1-body someone at maximum resilience. This alone has become something critical in competitive play, but since it's behind Trials of Osiris, I did want to mention another energy slot alternative. The Luna's Howl is a fan favorite that was brought back from the ages. It shoots at 140 RPM, but carries the benefits of the 180 archetype. This means really controllable vertical recoil with super high accuracy. It drops from the onslaught activity and has a really good perk pool too, so pretty much anything you get, you're going to enjoy. That being said, I've put a couple of the perk options that I prefer on screen so that you can sort of chase for a particular role. That's 26 weapons I believe are worth your time to chase, and as many free-to-play alternatives I could think of in their place. If you're looking for subclass builds to play with these, I've put up a video for each character on screen that you can click and watch now.